Jessica and Brandon Norwood are the dynamic duo behind the Sugar Daddy podcast, a financial literacy podcast dedicated to helping millennials build wealth and break the stigma around money conversations. As a married, elder millennial couple, their mission is to empower you to take control of your finances so you can live the life you've always dreamed of. Brandon is an award-winning licensed financial planner with over a decade of experience and a proven track record of managing millions in assets for clients across the U.S. Jessica brings a unique perspective as a tech professional, most recently working for a Fortune 100 company. She is the sugar daddy in their relationship, helping to fuel their financial journey. Brandon and Jessica have been featured in major media outlets like Investopedia, CNN Underscored, Fortune, MarketWatch, Real Simple, U.S. News, and more. Their personal goal is to become work optional in the near future, allowing them to travel the world with their 2 children while continuing to help others have better money conversations and achieve financial freedom. Welcome, Jessica and Brandon.
Thank you for having us.
We are excited for this conversation with you.
I'm excited for this conversation too, and I think it's exciting to talk about being work optional in the near future. So I just want to touch on that before we get into the meat of our conversation. Like, what are your thoughts and plans for your family in that regard?
Well, we say work optional because Brandon really loves what he does. And if you really love what you do, then you're really not working. So he wants to continue to work with his clients and help them, reach their goals. But for us, it means that we get to control our time. We really want to, if we want to go somewhere on a Tuesday morning, great. We have the option to do that. If we want to travel to see our kids wherever they might be, in their late teens, early 20s, and we want to explore whatever city they're living in, we want to be able to do that. So really for us, it just means our time is ours and nobody else gets to dictate what we do with it.
Did you always have that idea, or is that something more recent in your relationship?
As far as the traveling aspect, that has always been part of our relationship. But I would say the concept of work optional, I think, would say is honestly a more recent thing because most people traditionally think of retirement. Oh, I get 60, 65 years old and that's when I retire. And so I would say the idea of transitioning to enjoying your life now rather than waiting till later is definitely a more new thing. So it's definitely something that we've come across in the talking about in the past few years.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I would say too that I don't want to work until 60. I definitely don't want to work until 65, especially not if it's a need. For example, my parents are divorced and my mom is working. She never thought that she would be working well into her 60s. She had different plans for her life and then divorce derailed that. That's not a boat that I want to be in. And so if I can live a productive, happy, life before 60 and not be, behind a desk that I don't want to be behind, I mean, that's the ultimate goal.
See, I think that we're transitioning as a society, and I think we're going to, in not too distant future, going to get to a place where the concept of retirement and completely stopping working isn't going to be the thing anymore. I think people are going to reduce their work, right? And work 10, 20 hours a week, maybe in something that they enjoy more. But I think that we have a need to continue to be useful, and work fulfills that for a lot of us.
And the thing is, too, if you think about traditionally where retirement came from, a lot of the jobs were blue collar jobs. So they were labor intensive. And once you got to a certain age, you just couldn't physically do the job. And so that's where the concept of retirement came from, where, transitioning now, a lot of our jobs are white collar. So if you enjoy doing it and you're still of sound mind, I don't see a reason why not.
I can bring my laptop to Mexico and to Jamaica and
it's
to
just
Bora Bora.
And just say it's the part of it that you focus on is the optional part where like I can work because I like doing it, but I don't have to do it, which makes it a completely different feeling when you're actually doing it.
And being untethered to a desk or a fixed location is certainly really key to all of this.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's get into talking about money conversations between couples. And so I kind of introed with your travel plans, and there were a lot of conversations that went into that. I would guess that you two are actually really great at talking about money with each other. Is that true?
I would say so.
Yes, it's something that we nerd out about. I mean, we have, our own podcast that's all around financial literacy. That's obviously what Brandon does for work. And so we just naturally have those conversations on a daily, hourly basis, more so than anybody else, I would say.
And I would just say we have good communication in general, and it started early. So we were friends for a year and a half before we actually started dating. And so we built that foundation through communication and basically also some of the things that our parents had. Are both,
Products of
products of
divorce.
divorce. And I think a big part of that was the communication aspect. So I think we just communicate good in general across all different categories.
Well,
Yeah.
you beat me to it because I was going to
Oh,
ask you, have you always communicated well, and did you always talk about money with each other? And so I hear you say that the answer is yes, but I think for a lot of people listening, it is kind of mind-blowing, like, this concept of aligning our financial goals and starting to talk about money is a foreign concept to them. So, do you have some tips for getting started on that kind of stuff for couples?
Yeah, I would say that we started early because we didn't want to have our parents' relationships. And so, starting as friends, we didn't owe each other anything. So, we naturally just were honest and open and very transparent from the very beginning. But then, when our relationship moved from friendship into a romantic relationship, and we said, hey, this could really be something, and we saw kind of the writing on the wall, we knew we needed to just get everything out in the open, right? And so we were long distance. I ended up moving from South Carolina to North Carolina. That conversation was, okay, where do I live? I was looking at apartments. He assumed that I was going to move into his house.
because we both owned homes at the time.
Right. And so, that was a conversation. Okay, I'm not going to just pay you rent and then you have a bunch of equity in this home. And if this relationship doesn't work out, what do I get for it? Right. So we talked about those things. I had 6 figures in student loan debt. Brandon barely had $2,000, I think, when we first started our relationship. There's a big disparity, right? Is this now my debt? Will it be our debt? How do we handle that? And so we had a lot of those conversations really early on, and we just made it part of our day to day, and we just were honest. We set our expectations, we set our boundaries, we talked about, do we combine accounts? Do we not combine accounts? And again, because we were late 20s, we were both homeowners, we were used to paying our own bills. I think that's a very different conversation in general than, hey, we're right out of college, we don't own a pot together. Like, yeah, of course we're going to combine everything, right? We were already established adults, so we had to have those conversations early.
I think it also boils down to we didn't want to waste each other's time. So we had those tough conversations up front because, we had our deal breakers and we needed to discuss those because if they didn't align, there's no point in moving past this. And like I said, wasting time.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people aren't clear on deal breakers in that regard, or they think they have deal breakers and then it comes up and they're like, oh, it's not a deal breaker after all. And then later they get resentful about that. Like, I applaud you for having those conversations so early and being so intentional about it.
I mean, in all honesty, my mom has been married 4 times and divorced 4 times, unfortunately. And that's not the route that I wanted to go. So, I made sure that if I have a deal breaker, it's a deal breaker. like,
Yeah.
like for
Right.
example, kids. I think for a lot of people, kids can be a deal breaker. And I was like, I want to have kids. If you don't want to have kids, that's fine. But then we just
You're
be
not my
friends. We're not,
person.
you're not my person.
Yeah.
You know?
And my parents got divorced after 35 years of marriage. So his parents got divorced when he was 5. And so, he went through that experience when he was a child. I went through it with my parents as an adult, very different scenarios. And again, we knew what we didn't want. We had a lot of examples of red flags, deal breakers, and we very clearly know these are deal breakers. There are no second chances. These are not gray areas. These are, you can pack your bags and leave. And so again, we're not about wasting each other's time. We were very intentional about the conversations that we had. And I think really what rooted us is the vision for our life, right? What did we want our family structure to look like? What did we want our summers to look like? What do we want a random, Saturday morning to look like? And so a lot of our conversations were really based in dreaming big together. And so I think that it's very easy to get caught up in the numbers, right? The numbers are black and white, but that's the scary stuff. That's the intimidating part. Maybe somebody is in loads of debt. Maybe somebody's not earning what they thought that they would be earning at a certain point, right? There's a lot of shame and guilt and trauma that people bring in to their relationships when it comes to money. And when you're not open and honest and transparent about those traumas, those experiences, those things that really shape who you are and how you operate with money as an adult, that's where the breakdown happens. But if you focus on what you want your life to look like, maybe not where it is right now, but where you want it to be, where you want it to go, how you envision it, then you can start dreaming big together. And then you back into, well, what does the money need to look like? What changes do we need to make together to reach those goals? And I think more people should be doing that.
Well, then let's get into your dream framework because I think people listen and they think, I don't even know where to start with these conversations. All I know is every time we try to talk about money, it feels really uncomfortable. So I love the concept of having a framework, a roadmap for people to follow with this. So hit me with it.
So I'll break it down and then we can kind of chat about it. So it's called Dream because, again, we want people to dream big. That's the fun part, or should be the fun part of life. The numbers, we'll get to those, but we're going to dream, D.R.E.A.M. So the D stands for dive. This is where you're literally diving into your past to understand where your money mindset comes from. What were those money traumas? What did you hear about money growing up when you were a child? Did you have enough? Did you not have enough? What did you hear your parents say? All of that is absolutely going to shape how you interact with money today. Next, you're going to focus on the R, which is reflect. How is the experience that you had as a child or early adolescence, how is that showing up in your life today? So you're going to reflect, have some introspection. You're going to think about who you are as a person now. How is this showing up, right? Maybe you're operating in a scarcity mindset and you're hoarding all of your money. Maybe you're operating in a scarcity mindset and you're spending your money as soon as you get it because I don't know how long this is going to stick around, right? Things show up and manifest in a variety of ways. Do you want to do?
No, you're
Okay.
doing a great job.
Thanks. E is for engage. So this is where you actually start to have the conversation with your partner after you've done that reflection and that diving part to understand, your portion of money trauma, money mindset, all of those thoughts and feelings that you get when you think about money. But then you're going to go into E, which is engage. So how do you want to live your life? What does your future look like? What does it look like a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And then going back to that work optional, right? Some people don't talk about what they actually want to do in retirement. I mean, we've even seen it with our own parents. You work so hard your whole life and you have no plan for what you want your retirement to look like. So map that out. What does work optional mean to you? When do you want to be work optional? All of those details matter. So this is where you're really mapping that out and you're doing it in detail. That's the important part. Don't tell me you want to go on a vacation next summer. I want to know, where is this vacation? What month are you traveling? How are you going to get there? What airline seat are you going to buy? Where are you staying? What clothing are you going to wear? What food can you not wait to try? What experiences are you going to have? Really get into those details because that's what you're going to need to rely back on when you actually start looking into the money, right? That's what's going to help keep you grounded on your goals and the things that you're working towards. That engage portion where you're dreaming big, that is what is going to ground you.
Okay, I'm going to pause
Okay.
you. We're going to do
Yes.
the A and the M, but I want to
Okay.
pause and back up a little bit to the DR and the E.
Okay.
Um, I definitely love the concept of diving into your money mindset and where your beliefs about money come from and what's important to you. We all know some people are savers, some are spenders, some people are kind of in the middle. And I see a lot of couples who have vastly different concepts about what to do with their money, right? We have the saver who never wants to spend to go on a vacation. We have the spender who would blow everything on vacations. And how do they find a happy middle?
And they always
So,
find each other and then get married, right?
yes, yes. I mean, how do couples navigate this kind of stuff?
Well, first is having the conversations early on so that you're not, a year into marriage or a year into dating, whatever it may be, and now you're finding this information out. Like these are things that we talked about while we were dating, so that we already knew, like, This is what we want it to look like. This is what we want to do, and making sure that it does align. Now, if you are having a conversation for the first time and you've been together with somebody for a while, you also have to be able to give some give and take. Everything in a relationship is about compromise.
Compromise.
So if you have someone that is a saver and someone that is more of a spender, you meet each other somewhere in the middle. Or for example, you maybe have one vacation where it's leaning maybe towards more the spender, and another vacation is maybe leaning towards more the saver. So it's really no specific rules. The biggest thing that we want people to take away from it is that you have the conversation and you're in agreement of how you move forward.
I think too, the dive part, when you're learning not only about yourself, but then again, having that conversation and learning about your partner, that is going to put a lot of how people operate with money into context. I can tell you, if Brandon wants to purchase something, if it's over $50, it's going to take him 3+ weeks to decide on it. But you know what? I also know who his mama is, and I understand 100% why he is the way he is with money, right? So, understanding again that money mindset, how did that person grow up with money? What did they hear in their home? Those things are going to absolutely carry into not only how they are with money now, but how do they operate in your relationship. I know that me buying $100 pair of sunglasses and him eventually buying $100 sunglasses, we might get to that same resolve. It's going to take him 3, 4 times longer than me. And I know exactly why that is. And so it gives you context. It helps you operate a little bit more with empathy and understanding. And so that's why we want you to start with really like, what happened? What was Christmas like in your home, right? How often did you guys go out to eat? What happened when you went to a restaurant? I can tell you when I went to a restaurant, it was water only. No appetizers, no desserts. I can tell you now, I would rather cook and eat at home than to go out for a dinner now and somebody tell me I can't get the cocktail, I can't get the appetizer, don't even look at the dessert menu because I don't want that experience. I had that growing up, right? So Brandon knows if we're going out to dinner, you better let me eat that dinner.
I mean, not that I would do it anyway. So.
Right. But again, it's that context, right? It's the context of him knowing, also knowing my family, but knowing that was not enjoyable, right? Going out is supposed to be an experience. It's time together. It's supposed to be whatever it is you want it to be. That's what I wanted it to be. It wasn't that. So now when we do that, yes, we know the cocktail is going to be marked up 70% and we can make the same margarita at home. We get that. Let me enjoy my overpriced margarita that I didn't
Right?
have to make.
To an extent, it's about the experience. It's not as much about being able to drink a particular drink as it is the experience and the feeling that goes along with all of it. Now,
Now,
I don't think you specifically said this, you kind of alluded to it, but when the couple is reflecting on why they do the things they do, what's important to them when it comes with the money, I think it's important that some of that work be done completely independently so that you are formulating your own thoughts about it without the influence of the other person, especially if you're in a relationship where one person has a really dominant personality, right? Because they can kind of take over this process. So I've always thought about this process as something to do some independent work before we come together and do that work. What do you think?
100%.
I 100% agree.
Yes.
Because this is something that I do with my clients as well. Because like I said, a lot of people don't have these conversations. And I've definitely sat there and seen the uncomfortableness of, you could tell this is the first time they're having this conversation. Really haven't thought about it. They're not comfortable with it at all. So I've seen it firsthand.
So then we're getting into engaging and really doing some back and forth on what do we both want? What do our goals look like? What are some of the things that we might have to solve in the money before we move forward? That's all cool. Let's go on to the A and the M of dream.
Yes. So the A is act. Of course, we can't ever move forward. We're not going to reach our goals if we don't take some sort of action. And then also, as our lives change and they're constantly changing, we get new jobs, we add a house, we add children, we add elderly aging parents, whatever it might be, we have to manage because the money is going to go up and down. It's never going to stay the same, right? We hope that it continues to go up, right? But we have to manage our money because our conversations environments and our goals are going to shift and change over time as well. So we have to take action. This is where you're going to have those money meetings. You're going to look at the budget. You're going to look at the cash flow. You're going to look at that money in,
This is
money
more
out.
black and white stuff.
This is the stuff that people avoid. But again, you're going to start looking at this from a dreaming big perspective, right? Now you're looking at your money in terms of the home renovation, in terms of sending your kids to the fancy school, in terms of getting the new car, in terms of doing the vacation, whatever it might be. That's what's going to keep you grounded and moving forward to reach those goals.
And I think the order is very important because most people start with the black and white stuff, looking at the numbers. And most of the time, the numbers are not where you want them to be. And that just gets people disappointed and then they stop. They don't continue on.
Yeah.
When you start with the dreaming aspect and talking about the dream life that you want to live, then it gives you a good perspective for when you see the numbers. And you're like, hey, the numbers might not be where we want them to be, but we've already talked about where we want to be and we can do this. And now we have a destination, because if you start with the numbers, you normally don't have a destination first. You're just seeing the numbers.
Right.
So the order is very important there.
Yeah. Stick with the order. Don't scramble the letters. Don't scramble them.
I swear Brandon is in my brain today because that was going to be my next thing to comment on, is that there's two ways to go about the numbers. And the typical way people do it is they start with today's numbers and say, oh gosh, we're not making enough. We're spending too much. There's a problem in this. And then they try to work towards where we want to be. I'm a fan of starting with the big picture, the long term. What are our wildest dreams that, I need to accomplish this before I go to my grave or whatever. And let's work back from there because we can make a plan to get there. But
Yes.
yes, we have to get into the black and white of today. But if you start there, it can really be demoralizing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of people, when I sit down with people, often when I ask them what their goals are, they're often just monetary goals in the sense of like, oh, I want to have $1 million. I want to have $2 million. That's not a goal. People need to understand that money is a tool, not a goal. And once you change your mindset around that, then you'll use it properly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because it's one thing, like most of those people, if you said to them, okay, why did you choose the number $2 million? They will not be able to tell you
No idea.
why. But if you go through a process like this and you ultimately figured out, I will be able to go work optional once we have $2 million in our investment account because we know that that's what it's going to take to fund X, Y, and Z going forward and ensure that we are always having our bills covered, right?
Yes.
Totally different way of approaching it.
But yeah, because
Yeah.
people say like, oh, I want $1 million. I'm like, well, if you're looking to accomplish this and we could do it on 500,000, are you okay with that? They're like, of course. Well, then $1 million was not the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Being able
Right.
to, what is the money going to actually allow you to do?
Well, and it was, 20 years ago when people said they wanted to be a millionaire, that
Yeah.
was a lot different than $1 million today. It doesn't go nearly
Yeah.
as far. And
No.
so our thinking really has to change about these set dollar figures that somehow people think are the goal.
Yeah. I mean, it's so spot on. I started my career in teaching and now I'm in tech and I'm making, more money than I ever dreamt that I would. And I'm here to tell you, it still doesn't feel like enough, right? So when you are just looking at the numbers, it's never going to feel like enough. But when you put it up against what are my goals as an individual? How can I support my husband's goals? And then what are our family goals? And you can put that money into those buckets of what's important, right? Maybe it's something that's important in the next 6 months. Maybe we have to wait a year and a half or 2 years, right? Then at least you know what you're working towards and you can start kind of backing into it. You can do the numbers backwards. But if like Brandon said, if you start with the numbers, you're setting yourself up to be disappointed in most cases, right? Most of us are not walking around as millionaires. So in most cases, you're like, man, the strawberries are too expensive. Why is this so expensive? You're constantly analyzing the cost of everything and it's just never enough. So root yourself in the goals as an individual, as a couple, and as your, family grows and changes.
Well, I'm a huge proponent of working with financial planners, financial advisors, wealth advisors, whatever you want to call them, because I think you need a neutral third party to help facilitate some of this. You need someone who has experience with planning who can help you focus on what's important because there are so many details and so many nuances. So, Brandon, I want you to talk a little bit about how you work with clients on going through a process like this and how long does it take to get them right with their money and what could they expect?
So I do have basically my structure for when I bring on a new client. I have a 6 core meeting process that is the beginning of it. Now that can take anywhere from maybe 3 to 4 months, depending on you schedule meetings. People going to have to reschedule because life happens. But these 6 core meetings focus on some of the core areas such as debt reduction, risk management, investing, tax planning, estate planning, stuff of that nature. So those are the ones that we're going to go through, and I think it's kind of universal for everyone. However, you do obviously have your own specific scenarios that need to be addressed, and that's how those are addressed in separate meetings. But in all honesty, the biggest part about it is honestly the goals part, because everything from a planning standpoint is going to be built upon what are your actual goals. And from my experience, people don't really know what they want as far as goals. They have a generic idea from what society tells us or what social media is telling us. But when you really get to sit down with people and really talk through it, they find out that the goals they thought they had from like a very high level view are not exactly what they want. And unfortunately, you might talk to I've had clients that I'm still trying to help them figure out what their specific goals are because they just have a hard time letting go of some preconceived notions. So that's honestly the hardest part. And I think that's where everything is always going to come back to is what are your actual specific goals, because they do change over time also.
He always says that he feels like a psychologist
Yeah.
more than a financial planner
But no,
because it's
Sure.
so much people are so
the numbers are
emotionally
easy.
tied to their money.
Math is easy. Math is the easiest part. You know, it's the same in every language. 2 plus 2 always equals 4. It's figuring out how to get through to each individual person based upon their personality, past experiences, and finding a way for them to have that breakthrough so that we can have the success that I would like to see them have.
Well, to me, the process is so important because it's just for the average person, I think it's become very overwhelming. In the old days, when our parents were young married couples, I think money was a lot easier to manage. There was, people didn't, my parents didn't have credit cards for a long time. Budgets were pretty straightforward. Go to work, pay cash for what you can pay cash for, et cetera. Hope to own a home someday. It's become a lot more complicated. So to me, having a process and having someone facilitate that process and giving homework or whatever it may be is really helpful.
I think the hardest part too is that there's pros and cons to the time that we're living in, because before people didn't have access to the information. Now we have access to an abundance of information. And so with all that information becomes, overload, and then people have no idea exactly where they should go from there because like I said, it's great to have this information, but I see a lot of bad information. And people also have to weed through this might be good information, but it's not applicable to my specific situation. And I think that's
Right.
really where a professional can come in and help, because I'm really big on the financial literacy aspect. I don't want to simply tell you what to do. I want to empower you through the knowledge of what we're doing so that you're able to make the decision on your own. I'm just here as a guide.
All right, let's wrap things up with your Dream Big quiz. I am going to link it in the show notes so everyone's going to be able to get to that Dream Big quiz, but tell me what it's about and why people want to take it.
So, the Dream Big quiz is really a way to start the conversation, to understand, do you understand your own money mindset and where it came from and how it's showing up today? Do you understand your partners, right? Because you are in a partnership. Or if you want to be in a partnership, hopefully you want it to be a successful one where communication is open and transparent and, constant. And so we want to help you understand your money mindset as well as your partners. And then we want to help take that information and shape what your dream big journey is going to be, right? So we are going to prompt you. You can make it a cute date night. There's going to be a section for you to do and then for your partner to do. And then you kind of combine the answers and essentially build that vision for yourself. So we're going to prompt you, make it fun. Don't let it intimidate you. Pour a glass of wine, set the mood, make it a fun date night. That's really what we want these conversations to be as they're ongoing. We don't want it to be something you roll your eyes at and that you're dreading. We want it to be something that you're excited about and looking forward to. And so hopefully this quiz will help do that for you.
Well, I love it. Again, we are going to link to that in the show notes. We will link to Oak City Financial, Brandon's financial planning company. Jessica and Brandon, it has been so fun talking to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
For having us.